The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you, Lord.
The Pharisees went off and plotted how they might entrap Jesus in speech. They sent their disciples to him with the Herodians, saying, "Teacher, we know that you are a truthful man, and that you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. And you are not concerned with anyone's opinion, for you do not regard a person's status. Tell us then, what is your opinion? Is it lawful to pay the census tax to Caesar or not?" Knowing their malice, Jesus said, "Why are you testing me, you hypocrites? Show me the coin that pays the census tax." Then they handed him the Roman coin, and he said to them, "Whose image is this, and whose inscription?" They replied, "Caesar's." At that he said to them, "Then repay to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
So should we pay our taxes or not? No? Sometimes a little hard to swallow, right? Well, before we get everybody in trouble and before somebody reports me to the government, or Father Chris, worse, that I'm teaching that we shouldn't pay our taxes, all right, we'll calm all that. But that was the question they posed to Jesus. Should we pay our taxes? Is it lawful to pay taxes to the Romans, more specifically, or not? They thought they had laid out a real good trap for him. Very clever. Kind of a catch-22 for those of us that remember that phrase from Joseph Heller's book, Catch-22, that many of us, I guess, read in high school. If he said yes, we should pay the tax, he could have been declared a traitor and a Roman sympathizer, and a Jew telling people to support their oppressors. If he said no, then they would have snitched to the Romans and said he's preaching sedition or trying to undermine the government. Knowing their hearts and their motives, Jesus settled the question with one very simple yet profound answer. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, but give to God what is God's. This gospel passage today has at times been interpreted to mean that politics or government and church should not mix. If that's the case, then how do we carry out our responsibilities as good Catholics and Christians and as citizens of this great nation? We are Catholic Christians, but we are also Americans. We take our citizenship very seriously. We start every day in our classrooms with the Pledge of Allegiance, major sporting events, standing for the national anthem and singing proudly, hopefully. We have beautiful fireworks displays on the 4th of July, commemorating our Day of Independence. We support, honor, and pray for the men and women in uniform. We recognize their service for what it is. It's truly a noble endeavor. This is why we consider patriotism to be a virtue. Patriotism is also the fourth principle of the Knights of Columbus. The Knights of Columbus have 4 degrees, for those that don't know, first through the 4th. And each one has an accompanying principle or virtue by which the men and the women of the Knights of Columbus live. Charity, unity, fraternity, patriotism for the 4th degree folks. Good patriotism lies in the ability to judge our victories or our successes, but it also takes into account the times when we as individuals, and especially as a nation, have not been at our best. However, we are Christians first and foremost, and our responsibility to God is greater than our responsibility to country. Will we be ever forced to make a choice between the two? We do in kind of a mild form at different times. Pick your hot button issue, but truthfully, not too much, not to a point where it's make the choice and death is the implication. Thomas More would be a good example of that a few hundred years ago. St. Thomas More. Thomas More was a good friend of a guy named Henry VIII, King of England. They hit it off so well that Henry VIII made Thomas More his advisor and also his chancellor, the chancellor of his government. Thomas More was a very, very capable person, very religious person. But then the subject of Henry's marriage came up at one point, and he was seeking an annulment from his marriage with Catherine of Aragon. Thomas More didn't think this was too cool, so he openly criticized Henry VIII. Henry VIII had had enough of it, and he declared himself head of the church. He then made the people of England, those that he governed, sign an oath declaring that he had religious supremacy, more so than Rome. Thomas refuted this, so Henry VIII stripped him of his chancellorship, imprisoned him, and then eventually beheaded him. Thomas's last words were, "I died as the king's faithful servant, but God's first." As people who care deeply about our nation, we have a moral responsibility to support both God and country. But we also believe that a priority must be kept. God first, country second. You may have seen some of the bumper stickers around by football fans or whatever at our retreat at White House here recently. A guy was wearing a shirt, God, country, Notre Dame. And a friend of mine who's a diehard Browns fan from that area, God, country, and the Cleveland Browns. So he's depressed a lot. And I can't help to give him ribbing occasionally. We raise our voices to advocate, to help our country make good moral laws, so that we might always truly be one nation under God. But this sometimes means being countercultural, is the phrase that you'll hear today once in a while. We pay our taxes, for those that still wonder. We pay our taxes, but we push for a fair tax system for all. We rail against laws that destroy life. We advocate for changing a system that allows the marginalized to slip through the cracks of our society all too often. We are reminded today that we should be active and courageous and moral citizens of our country. That's how we render unto Caesar what is Caesar, and that's how we give to God